People Not Titles podcast is brought to you by Land Trust Title Services, your partners for results. Well, hello, this is Steve Kaempf and Matt Lombardi with the People Not Titles podcast, brought to you by Land Trust Title Services. And this is this our third, Matt?
I think it's our fifth installment.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Correct. So I think we're on number 5.
Okay. We are on number 5 for our installment of market trends. And Matt, I wasn't going to bring up the KISS Army today.
Oh, okay.
But I'm going to.
Please.
And the reason I am is I have this live rock and roll playlist, so it's live music. And today on the way here, on comes Detroit Rock City from KISS.
A classic?
Yeah, and it is on KISS Alive 2, which I remember when I got the album. There's a picture of Gene Simmons with blood all over his face. That seemed to be something that was appealing and attractive. So, and speaking of appealing and attractive, Matt, I just want to acknowledge you look very good today.
Thank you, as do you. I think we look very summery.
Summery.
Today. And we are recording. Today is August 5th.
Okay.
For those viewers, listeners.
So we're just starting, so we don't want to do the summary until the end.
The summary of?
Yeah, well, you just said we look very summery.
Oh.
And we want to shift to, see, it's
Sorry,
a little play on words,
on
Matt.
the
Yeah,
uptick,
okay.
Yes. So we're dressed for the weather.
Yeah, dressed for success.
Absolutely.
All right. We got the KISS Army out of the way, but don't hold me to it that we might refer back to it as we go. All right, Matt, let's talk about, we are 12 days away.
Yes.
From the NAR settlement kickoff of the change. And so let's recap again, what can we expect, besides some chaos, what can we expect on August 17th?
So just to recap, NAR settlement, August 17th is the first day where the new rules will be enacted. So I'm sure everybody in the industry is aware of it, but just a little reminder, as Steve said,
and we might have non-industry people watching us. As a big fan base we have.
Correct. So for those realtors, attorneys in the industry, you should be well aware of this. For those not in the industry, August 17th is the first day where the NAR settlement guidelines go into place, and those are two things. Buy-side commissions will no longer be placed and no longer be allowed to be placed in MLSs. So that used to be the industry standard. That is now going away. Number 2, buyers will now be able to negotiate how much they pay their buyers' representatives. So before that, it was a one set commission price.
Whatever the seller offered.
Correct. So negotiated, typically, if you ask anybody, 5 to 6% was the industry standard. This has always been a negotiable factor. But now moving forward, listing agents will have to negotiate their own commission. Buyer's agents will need to negotiate their own commissions and have their own separate agreements. So the thought process is consumers will benefit in the end by that. The last part I wanted to say.
We'll see, right?
Correct. So just because the commission will not be allowed to or be in the MLSs moving forward, sellers can still agree to pick up the buyer's commission as a concession as part of their listing agreement. So that's something new that will be coming to the table. We've been hearing more and more about that.
So a seller, even though they're not listing in the MLS, can have a conversation to say, hey, as part of the negotiation, we are going to pay X to the commission.
Correct. And the thought process, it makes it more advantageous to buyers so that they understand what it is. And there is that sellers understand that they want the marketability and providing that commission payment to the buyer's representative.
Yeah, and so that is, although people might say, oh no, that's like enticing the buyer's agent to show one or the other. Actually, it could be that for sure, and it also could be accommodating the buyer who can't afford to pay the commission out of pocket. So it serves both instances, and so we'll see how the market settles out on it.
Correct. So as we've said, probably the last few months, there's a whole lot more to come as this happens in the industry officially. It's been happening over the last few months. We've been seeing it more and more as part of the separate agreements. Many brokerages have already enacted this. So we'll see what happens after the 17th, and that may be a good topic of conversation for the next installment of this Market Trends podcast.
Absolutely. So we're already teeing it up. We already have stuff in the hopper for that time.
We're ready.
So, Matt, I wanted to talk about this article I saw that said agents have to show up in a post-settlement world. And there's this article, and basically it talked about how existing agents right now, even since all of these lawsuits have began, we have, and this changes in the NAR, we have seen buyers' commission slip about 0.1 or 0.2%. And any comment on that?
Well, I'm not surprised by that, because now that it used to be in the dark, in my opinion, where buyers didn't know that they were paying this premium, this commission payment. So now that the conversations have to be had, I think more buyers, and more sellers for that matter, are now like, hey, I really can negotiate this. This isn't a set standard fee. So I'm not surprised to hear that commission rates are slightly ticking down a little bit.
So everything is negotiable. A lot of
Right.
people don't think it is, and they're coming to awareness now, like it's been negotiable all along, actually.
Right. And so for homeowners that are looking to sell or buy property, have that conversation when you speak with your representative, saying, you know, I understand that there is a commission as part of this transaction. Let's talk about that. I think that's the biggest thing, is to have that conversation.
Yeah, and what this article talked about is that, first off, there is a trend towards kind of skepticism towards the value of an agent. And I think that although there's been a lot of work done by the associations to talk about everything an agent does, I think it still is underestimated the work that a real estate agent does on a transaction. That just the thought behind it in this article was talking about how a buyer's agent, they open up the door for you. Well, there's a lot more they do to make sure you have a great property and have no hassles than that. And there's a 50-point or 60-point list of all the things a buyer's agent does. But one point it did make is that the buyer's agent is going to really need to show up and add value. And I think that real estate agents, who is going to be left is going to be offering a better service, a better value, and a better product. I think that's going to be the end result of it, but we might have a little bit of a bumpy road getting to it.
And it comes down to differentiating yourself as an agent. You know, there's I would say, a laundry list of things that any agent brings to the table. It's how she or he represents themselves, their past track record, their success, the connectivity to the network of people that you will need to know along the way, which could be attorneys, could be inspectors, could be any other thing along the property transaction. So I think agents need to define their value much more crisply, clearly, and compellingly than they've had to in the past. And from the consumer side of it, interview those agents. Don't feel obligated to use Uncle Tom, who got his license and doesn't really do anything. I've said this throughout my career. It's like, use the best agent that works for you and avoid family members for this type of transaction. That's my take on it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Matt. And not the family member thing, but I believe that what you're going to see being flushed out over this period of time are kind of the wannabes. And because there's a low bar of entry and I can pay some money and I can take a test, I can be an agent,
right.
There tends to be that bottom group that isn't able to justify the value and doesn't provide the value. However, there is a fantastic group of professional real estate agents that are worth every penny that they're paid on commission on both sides. Okay, so moving on to that, Matt. The next thing is the Bankrate article that said, is NAR a cartel? I just want to say, full disclosure, Matt, you were part of the cartel at one point. I mean,
was a proud representative of the
do you have
cartel.
a mafia name, like aside, like, you know, Louis the Nose or, you know, something like that? Do you have a nickname as part of the cartel?
That's my business. that's my business. So
we should have a bag over your head, and you should be talking like in the shadows.
next podcast, we could put me in the corner, and you'll just hear a voice. But yes, So this was a very fun article that Steve and I found on bankrate.com. And we try it, when we do this.
We're spicing it up, Matt.
We try and find interesting things. So this was an interesting article of, and what is a cartel? So an example of a cartel would be OPEC, which are the
oil guys.
The oil and the Persian Gulf.
Yep.
They control the flow of so much oil and gas, and they can say, we're going to raise the price, lower the price. The exact definition is an organization of independent producers who collude to boost the profitability of market players. This cooperation could include restriction of output or control of price. So that's what a cartel is. So is NAR a cartel? So I'm going to cover both sides. That, first of all, NAR is not a cartel. So of course NAR is going to say we're not a cartel, because it's a trade association that provides member benefits such as education, advocacy, national property data, and other things.
And they do provide that, Matt.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And NAR advocates for consumers, which includes home buyers, sellers, as well as their members. Real estate, if you ask certain people, is a perfectly competitive industry. NAR doesn't control the supply and inventory of new homes and existing homes. And NAR advocates, like I said, not only for its members, but for homeowners and property owners. And some examples of things that NAR has shepherded through the regulatory process: 30-year mortgage rates, 30-year mortgages, 3.5% down payment, the tax deductions that certain people have had over the years. And we've talked about this in previous Market Trends podcasts, they're a very heavy lobbying legislative organization. So they want to do things advantageous not only for the realtor members, but also for property owners to get the advantages as much as everybody can gain out of being a property owner, which a lot of that is tax benefits.
And Matt, there's a lot of attacks on homeownership. There's a lot of attacks on the realtor organization, to independent contractors. I mean, we can go on and on about this. And NAR is quietly working to keep that piece of it safe.
And like Steve said, I worked for NAR for many, many years, and our lobbying groups, I think, are some of the best in the industry. And what I recall them saying is, about all the good stuff we did. What a lot of people don't know is the stuff that never came through because of our efforts.
Yeah.
Things that politicians may want to do that they put the stop to before it hit.
And you were on the other side of that wall, and you knew some of those things.
So that's the argument that NAR is not.
Let's find out why they are, though, Matt.
So there's others in the industry who claim that NAR is a cartel.
And who are these others, Matt?
So these include some agents.
Okay.
These include some economists.
Okay.
So those are people that were part of this article, and like I said, it's on bankrate.com if you wanted to look on their website to find this specific article. But the main argument that it is a cartel is the information that NAR and realtors hold, primarily the MLS. One point is realtor commissions have fluctuated, but they've maintained over the last 40 to 50 years between 5 to 6%. And so that there's this.
So the NAR protects agent wages.
Well, so NAR will say all commissions are negotiable, but yet the data shows it's between 5 and 6% on average, around just over 5% of what people have paid for a realtor commission. And that includes both sides of the transaction. So from that effect, it has been resilient. So even though there has been negotiation, those on the other side saying, you guys are controlling this, there is an argument to be made like, hey, if consumers really had their way, this would be significantly lower. And just to look at what it is in the U.S., like I said, it's currently just over 5%. But if you look in the UK, it hovers between 1.5% to 2.5%.
For the entire transaction?
Correct.
Okay.
And in Australia, 2 to 4%.
Okay.
And those are countries that are very similar to the U.S. in how transactions are done.
Okay.
Obviously, in every other country, it's a whole different ballgame. But that's a comparison there. Another argument is there's multiple rules NAR uses to keep competition and commissions high. That being the MLS. The MLS is an information resource, but it's only accessible to those that are part of the MLS. The majority, if not all of those people accessing the MLS are realtors. So the argument is there is collusion to keep that commission high, such as when they, once again, we're taking out on August 17th in the MLS the buyer commission statement. And the argument used to be like the higher the buyer's agent commission, the more likely and more people will look at your property because that agent wants to be paid a higher commission versus that. So in theory, you could have put 1% commission rate, but the thought process is, well, no one's going to show the house at that rate. So once again, we'll see after August 17th what happens. But that's another argument that it is what it is with the cartel definition. And then the last point I wanted to make is their lobby. You know, so the counter argument it is their lobby is also there to inflate the member numbers. You had said, you know, it's a low barrier of entry. It is a low barrier of entry to get a real estate license.
Yeah, relatively.
Relatively speaking. And so NAR, it makes them sound so much more powerful when they say we have over 1.5 million members on the street doing the home buying and selling process.
And so that the power of that is what a government agency who's making laws would think of is they have 1.5 million realtors that are each talking to or have on their mailing list 500 to 1,000 other people. They're constantly in the community. They're movers and shakers. We could be dealing with, if it's 1,500,000 people, they have a reach of 500 million people by word of mouth. They start to get afraid, and that gives NAR the leverage.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So those are the arguments. You guys can make the case one way or another.
Yeah.
The way I see it is I'm always somewhere in the middle. So it could be considered a cartel in that it's controlling the real estate information, and for years and years and years the commissions have been secretive, and I think agents were not colluding, but there's industry standard that we're looking for a minimum of 2.5% per side.
Okay.
And if you're able to get higher than that, great. So we'll see what happens. But NAR, for all the bad that's out there, they also do a lot of good.
Yeah, and I think for buyers and sellers right now, it's a opportunity for them to educate themselves on how the process works, have a conversation with several different people, and just like buying a car or whatever you're going to do, you have to have you don't have a deal until you have two deals. Then you can maybe get a deal. You know what I mean?
But I'll just reiterate, for those of you listing and wanting to sell your home, interview multiple realtors, a minimum of 3.
And avoid Uncle Tom.
That's my take.
That's your take.
I've been saying that.
Hey, there's plenty of family members that do a great job.
They do.
Right? But not
sometimes
a lot
not
of them.
so much.
Yep. If the only reason you're doing business with them is because they're part of the family, you may want to avoid that.
Correct.
Okay? All right. Matt, let's talk about this proposed rent cap plan by President Biden. Is this just a scam to create good news that is never going to trickle down to the benefit of people?
So there's two things we're going to talk about here. One is this rent cap proposal by the current administration, as well as a housing affordability initiative, which I think is happening.
Okay.
But as Steve points out, each political administration, especially in an election year, especially at this crunch time before the November elections, they're going to come out with a lot of things that sound good but are probably dead on arrival. So the first one is this proposed rent cap that the White House unveiled, I think, last week. And the proposal is capping rents at 5% per year for those landlords that own properties with 50 or more units. So big multi-unit properties. The proposed rent cap would be 5% per year.
So good for the consumer, perhaps.
Good for the consumer.
Not so good for if you're a real estate investor, because
Correct.
now you're maxed out.
So as soon as this was announced, all the industry activists, associations, groups said this no good.
Yeah.
And
Never
I
gonna
would agree.
happen.
Anytime rent caps have been initiated in cities or different municipalities, it's usually not a good thing.
Yeah, scared people.
It sounds good.
From investment.
Right. It's going to limit investment. And so the hook in this is if they don't, once again, this has to be approved by Congress. This isn't going to happen before the end of the year. So this is more, in our opinion, of a politically motivated thing.
Okay.
It's probably dead on arrival, but it sounds good as a news bite that we are concerned about the affordability of rents, and we're going to try and do something.
Yeah.
Here's our proposal.
And they've stopped me from doing it. Otherwise, I would have saved you money.
Right. And so the hook for landlords, if this were to pass, is they could lose many a tax incentive for owning their multi-unit things.
Okay.
The flip side is there is a housing affordability proposal. I think this has been enacted through HUD, where they've awarded right now $85 million in grants for, it's called the Pathways to Removing Obstacles for Housing, or the PRO Housing Program. What this is, I think 21 municipalities had to put in proposals for affordable housing.
Some of them in Illinois?
Some of them are in Illinois,
Okay.
but throughout the country. And so HUD has designated, I forget what the dollar amount is per proposal for that. And they've also said that they are going to do another $100 million, I think, next year or by the end of this year. Because housing has become so unattainable in so many metro areas, builders are unwilling to build communities or quote-unquote affordable housing, so this incentivizes them to do it. So the rent cap plan, probably not going to happen. This housing affordability program is happening. It's a good thing. And this housing affordability program is nothing new. This is happening all the time.
There's opportunity zones back in the day.
Correct.
So Matt,
that's happening.
Yeah. So I just have to say, as a citizen, just sitting here listening to that, when I hear the word million, whatever we're sending money, we're sending aid everywhere, right? It doesn't sound like it's enough. It doesn't sound like it's going to be even impactful. It sounds like it's just a blurb that none of us are going to experience. Is that?
I would agree with that. For you and I, we will see none of this. This is for a very small subset of the country in 21 areas. So yes, some people will positively be impacted by this. Most of us won't even know this is happening.
So Matt, and that is, there is, right now one of the biggest issues on the table is affordability. Affordability for a house, affordability to raise a family, groceries, all this kind of thing. I think it's going to really put a lot of pressure on whatever we're doing in housing and how creative we can become to give people affordable homes to live in and create, the American dream of having a house and having a family and, working and sending your kids to school and creating a life for yourself.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
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 Okay. Yes.
I have no other comments other than
yes.
I agree with you 100%.
Okay. Let's get into, Matt, 2024 NAR member profile.
So yes. So
let's talk about this. What? Wow! Look at that.
So this is the big boy. It's 80+ pages.
That looks like a government bill.
So I've said this before. NAR's research department is one of the best I've ever seen. One of their annual reports.
How about their marketing?
Their marketing was fantastic. I can't speak to it now. So not quite a month ago, it's on an annual basis, NAR comes out with their member profile. Member profile is all aspects of the realtor membership. So they do a very robust, great job of surveying the members, getting lots of data and feedback back. So I'm going to go through some numbers here, and so bear with me.
So Matt, did the number agent count go up or down, or is that still secret?
So no, we know that
the cartel holding those in.
No, we know that the agent count is now lower than last year,
okay,
and it will probably be lower.
Okay, and that's a good thing, I think, overall.
It's a good thing. We've talked about this before, that there will be a shakeout in the industry. The lower level people who are doing a lot of business, they'll make the business decision like, it doesn't make sense for me. I'm doing 0 deals. I'm not going to maintain my license, my MLS membership, my realtor membership. So there will be a lower number, I predict, next year. It's how low will it go?
Okay.
But yes, NAR is stopped. They used to publish for public consumption. Their member rolls, mysteriously, that vanished a couple months ago. They still publish the high level, so if you look on the homepage of NAR.realtor.
Hey, thanks for listening to the People Not Titles podcast. We are brought to you by our great sponsors, Land Trust Title Services, your partners for results.
Realtor, you'll see 1.5 million plus realtors.
Okay.
But the typical realtor is a 55-year-old white woman who attended college and is a homeowner. Typical realtor has 10 years of real estate experience working as an independent contractor for an independent real estate company. So that is the broad stroke of who today's realtor is, not unlike previous years. It's a female-dominated industry. I think it's 64% of NAR's membership are female, 35% male, 1% said they don't want to, 1 to 2% said we're not going to answer
They're holding
that.
out.
Holding out. But yeah, median years of experience is 10, which is
that's a long time.
Year over year.
Yeah.
And what I showed before, you can download for free. It's the highlights of the big profile, which gives a lot of the data that I'll go through. You could buy it if you're a realtor member. I think it's $15 for a PDF download.
Okay.
Just not plugging products, but if anybody wants to buy that, you can, or get the free information. And I'm going to go through some numbers here just for the audience. Median years of real estate experience is 10. Median numbers hours worked per week by realtors is 35 hours. These are the fun ones. The gross median annual income from all real estate activities, buying, selling, etc., $55,800. But the net median annual income for real estate activities after taxes and expenses, which would include MLS, realtor dues, marketing,
and the cartel getting their share.
Correct, is only $35,000.
Okay.
So for those that think that the real estate agent is making tons of money, on average, they are not. And we've said this before, 20% of the agents are doing 80% of the business. Those 20% are typically more experienced, have their business set up much better, have a great client base, a great referral network. They're doing just fine. Mm-hmm. And they will continue to do just fine. It's the others that aren't doing. So when you put in 1.5 million people, their average median income is $35,000 per year.
Okay.
Which is, I'm trying to think year over year, pretty consistent. I've seen it as high as 45,000. I've seen it lower than 30,000. So it depends, but for across the board, not making a lot of money. I already talked about the demographics, 65% female, 33% male, 2% other or not to be asked. Mm-hmm. This is a fun stat, and this is for, I think, attorneys watching this. This is just a good data point to have, and other realtors. 77% of realtors actively use Facebook for their professional purposes. Mm. Very high percentage.
A lot of action happening on Facebook.
So realtors are very active on Facebook for their own networking, for their own promotions, for their own client interactions. But, for attorneys who want to connect with realtors, that's a good place to do it is Facebook. Mm-hmm. So for attorneys watching and want to get in the realtor community, start doing some Facebook searches and check that out. Just a couple other things here from this profile. More than a quarter of realtors named lack of inventory and housing affordability as the most important factors limiting potential clients from making a purchase. Nothing
new there. Yeah. Lack of inventory. In other words, I don't want to sell because I don't know what I'm going to buy, right? Or I want to buy, but there's nothing that I like for sale.
Correct.
And then, of course, the other one is I can't afford that.
Correct. And only 6% of realtors indicated that real estate was their first career. And this is not earth-shattering either. Most people do not go as their first career in the real estate world. So it's not a first career of choice. Most realtors had a primary business, typically in sales or management before they got into it. Maybe they decided I'm done with my job and I have the sales background. But just be aware of that most people you'll be dealing with from a consumer side with a realtor, it wasn't their first choice of profession.
Matt, I wonder, I've seen a lot of resumes in the real estate field, and what struck me, right around 2020 is how many college educated and higher education folks are in real estate. And so I would wonder what the demographic, maybe we could look on the NAR, what the demographic would be in terms of the kind of education of an agent.
Right. Most agents, according to the
Have some
profile,
college.
have college.
Yeah,
Correct.
okay.
Have taken,
Courses.
correct, and it's the majority. So yes, they are educated. They come from a professional background.
Yeah.
So yes, and this profile talks about 1,001 other data points, which I won't go into. But one that I will point out, and I think I've said this before, is realtors are invested in the community. They're typically married, stable. Their household income, I think, is $140,000. So that's the family income for the household. They're property owners. Typically, I think close to 85 to 90% own the home they live in. So they're invested in their home. They believe, and many of them have second homes, vacation homes, investment homes. A lot of realtors who are savvy enough understand the investment opportunities and get into multifamily, storage units, farms, other investment properties.
Matt, are there any stats on realtors and the KISS Army at all?
You would need to check, I believe, with the official KISS Army for that
All right,
data
the
point
statistician.
But yes, KISS Army people, I think, tend
There's a big
on
contingent.
a higher level
Yeah.
with median income,
Yeah.
home ownership,
Absolutely.
investment in the community.
Yeah. Hey, to
So-
see a KISS concert these days, it's a big investment. It's probably $400 a ticket or whatever,
Are they
right?
still touring, or are they?
Oh,
I
they're
think
always
they-
touring
okay,
until
I
they
thought
die.
They retired.
No, they had the final world tour, and so they're going to have the final world tour in 2026.
Sounds good.
Okay, Matt, U.S. inflation and mortgage rates. Let's talk about this. We literally woke up this morning to a red market.
Yeah.
Things happen in Japan or whatever. We're not market experts in that investment world, but it seems to me like the overall tone of this market correction, and who knows where it's going to go by the time this comes out, is the Fed waited too long.
Correct.
Elon Musk said it, several others said it, so talk to us.
So what's happening today, August 5th, is Japan market opened very down, and all other markets across the world have shadowed that. And if you look at the stock market over the last 4 years, I believe it's up 40%. Good thing. So there's always blips. I'm not going to talk about investments, but if you look at S&P 500, if you look at Dow, if you look at NASDAQ,
We've had growth.
great growth over the last 4 years. Those are good things. But then anomalies happen. And so there's been, the inflation rates that we've talked about numerous times. We talk about the job, and unemployment rate, job openings, etc. The exuberance and excitement are being tamped down right now. So the Fed has done their job up to a point, but there's others now saying they haven't done enough, and this market correction is a big red flag. We need to do something. So I have in my notes, because today there's talk of a potential emergency rate cut this week.
Wow.
Maybe not a big rate cut, but
Something to acknowledge.
like,
Yeah.
hey, we see what's happening.
Yeah.
We need to tamp this down immediately. If that does not happen, the word on the street, and it sounds like 100% probability when the Fed meets next time in September, there will definitely be a rate cut. So look over the next week or two if there is an emergency rate cut. If not, there will definitely be one in September. Depending on who you ask, there may be additional rate cuts this year, and definitely some additional rate cuts next year. So yeah, I'm going to go through this. Yeah, I had said the exuberance is out. So job gains have moderated. Unemployment is a little higher. Yearly inflation is continuing to go down, but the exuberance isn't there. In fact, the unemployment rate today is 4.3%. I think that's the highest it's been, I think, since pre-COVID. So it used to be like, hey, jobs are good, jobs are good, jobs are good, and they are. And when you look at 4.3%, that's a good normalized rate. Things are going to happen because the market's telling them it needs to happen. So we'll see what happens with inflation rates. Next week, like I said, the next Fed meeting is September. Maybe an emergency rate cut.
All right, Matt, let's get into where are rates right now?
So mortgage rates have gone down over the last week. So if you shop around, I think you can get maybe today with good credit 6.5%, depending on that.
Yeah.
With or without a maybe a little point, but like 6.5 to 6.8, which is good.
Where it has been as high as 7.5,
Correct.
whatever it is. So
Correct.
they're
So
dipping
the
back down.
typical 30-year mortgage rate is in that range. And the markets factor in these future rate cuts, so a lot of that is factored in. But if rate cuts do happen, that will be impacting and lowering the mortgage.
And
rate.
a lot of times these Fed rates, like you said, the market does factor in, but it gives people psychologically reason to start going, oh, it's going in the right direction, I'm going to buy. So anyway.
So mortgage rates are happening.
The lock-in effect, Matt. Let's talk about this.
This is a great article Steve found in the New York Times talking about, and we've brushed and talked about it a little bit, called the lock-in effect of current mortgage holders. Until I read the article, I didn't realize how impactful and big the lock-in effect is.
Yes.
And so in sum, the lock-in effect is if you are a mortgage holder, which most people who own property have a mortgage.
Yep.
And if you have bought and or refinanced over the past X amount of years, your rate is typically 3% or lower. This article, which is great, some high points of it, huge number of homeowners have mortgage rates too good to give up and have them locked into their current home. So what this means is those people that typically would upsize, or I'm transferring jobs, I need a bigger house, my family's growing, or conversely, my kids are out of the house. I don't need this big house, I want to downsize. I want to move to the country, I want to move to the city. People who are current property owners that have a mortgage, their rate is so good that if they moved, it's disincentivizing them to do so. So in this article, which is a great data point, this lock-in effect is responsible for 1.3 million fewer homes being sold over the last 2 years.
Wow.
Which is 100% true, because if you look at the running average of existing home sales, it typically numbers around 5 million. The latest NAR data is showing they're forecasting for year-end 3.86 million existing home sales, which is the worst it's been since 1995.
Wow.
So the lock-in effect is impacting it that way.
Hold on, Matt.
Yes,
Say it again. We brushed over that. Existing home sales is the worst it's been since 1995.
Correct.
Wow.
In terms of number of transactions.
Number of transactions. That's amazing. That's a 30-year low.
Correct. And I think
I can do the math.
Correct. Steve and I participated and viewed Lawrence Yun and Jessica Loutz, chief economists for NAR. They did their mid-year economic forecast summit, which you could also look and find the slides as well as the presentation on nar.realtor. But it was a mid-year update of many things Steve and I talk about during this podcast, but on a national level with some local perspective here and there. But the interesting point, as I just said, this will be the worst year of home sales since 1995. And as Lawrence Yun pointed out, we have 70 million more people in the U.S. versus 1995.
So it is
really
plugged up.
Correct. And so
we need major X-lax. We need financial X-lax.
Yep. And so here's a great data point from this article is about 70% right now of all mortgage holders have rates that are 3 percentage points below what the market would offer them if they wanted to get a new loan right now. So that is the definition of the lock-in effect.
That's what's holding everything up.
Correct. So imagine 70% of all mortgage holders have a rate 3 points lower than what they can get on the market right now. And so this translates, lock-in rates are currently about $50,000 on an average mortgage, or about $511 per month. So if you were to sell your house now and buy a new one, that's what you're giving up through this lock-in effect, because it'll cost you on average $500 plus more for your current mortgage.
You know, Matt, RFK Jr. spoke at Inman.
Yes.
And one of the things he said was that homeownership is the economic engine for the middle class. And if you think about it, let's just talk about 1.3 million homeowners transactions that didn't happen. The amount of commissions, the amount of moving truck revenue, Home Depot, renovation, contractors, and on we go. Appraisers, surveyors, all these different tradespeople, all that is a major hit to the economy.
Correct.
And so anyway,
It's trillions of dollars being lost due to lack of transition.
Yeah, people just holding on and squeezing out various people in the job market.
But I would agree, it is what you just said. It is the economic driver for the middle class.
Yeah.
Property ownership, because that was, and hopefully still will continue to be, the dream of people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I want to own my own place. Mm-hmm. I want to live here. I'm going to invest in my home in the community. And as you said, all the other ancillary businesses that feed off of that have been negatively impacted and affected. Like you said, plus no one's getting mortgages, no one's refinancing. Those businesses are very slow. Mm-hmm. Like you said, the inspectors, there's nothing to inspect because nobody's moving. Mm-hmm. So transactions are still happening. It's just tremendous, so much lower than we've experienced in our careers and I'll say lifetime.
Yeah. All right, man, let's get into listing inventory and prices for June.
Yeah. So I'll go over 3 areas which we've done over the last, so U.S., Chicago market, and the state of Wisconsin. So in the U.S., existing home sales fell 5.4% June versus May of this year, and are 5.4% lower than this point year over year last year. So once again, decline. I mentioned this before, the forecast for year end is about 3.9 million home sales, which will be the lowest it's been since 1995. Inventory of home for sale rose just over 3%. And
so that's a good sign, right? We have
correct.
inventory clicking up.
Correct. So we always want more inventory. It's clicked up, so about just over 4 months supply, which is the highest in the past 4 years. So that's a good economic indicator. What we want is a healthy market. The experts say we want a 6-month supply. We haven't had a 6-month supply of inventory for quite a while. So, and then the median sales price, and I said this last month, it rose just over 4%, and the median sales price is now $426,900, which is the highest on record.
Wow.
Last month was the highest on record. Now this month has eclipsed that.
Okay.
So, once again, fewer homes for sale, even though it's ticked up a little bit. Mortgage rates, number of buyers, lock-in effect, prices go up, inventories need to come up to balance the pricing. In the Chicago metro area, which includes northern Cook County, Will County, Kane, Lake, etc., closed sales were 8661, which is 15.3 or just over 1,500 units less than this point last year, and there were just 0.2% fewer sales versus last month. So month over month,
kind of
flat. Year over year, down again. Inventory of homes for sale was essentially flat month over month, and that was just over 13,000. Median sales price, which I believe is a new record for this area, is $375,000. Days on market went down. I think it was 21 last month. It's now 19. So here in Chicago.
Wow, things are still selling fast and faster.
Correct. So once again, low inventory, lots of demand. People are snatching up things very quickly. In the state of Wisconsin, closed sales. So this is the first time they've had a positive uptick since January. This is the first month there was a downturn.
A lot of good action in Wisconsin.
Correct.
But,
so closed sales were down. It came out to 6,465 units, which is 760 units less than last year, or just 10% less than last year. So that's the first downturn this year for the state of Wisconsin. Inventory of homes for sale was just over 19,000, which was a little higher than year over year last year, which is good. Median sales price rose to $327,500. And the days on market, unlike here in the Chicago marketplace, was just over 100 days. So a more balanced market in Wisconsin.
Okay.
But yeah, those are the high-level snapshots of Wisconsin, Chicago area, and the U.S. The overarching theme is not a lot of activity. Prices continue to appreciate. A lot of people who are snatching up homes, they've been waiting. They have the financing or the cash to buy it. those that are making the deals happen, and they're willing to pay a premium.
Awesome. Matt, tell us some of the things that we have going on, land trust and in the local real estate community.
So first I'll say Steve's latest podcast, if you haven't checked it out, is a great interview with one of our very own. Her name is Denise Hellstrom, our senior account executive. She's one of our great salespeople, and it's a great in-depth article that Steve conducted with Denise, where you know, and I love listening to him because I know these people firsthand, but then you listen to a nice in-depth interview that Steve does, and you learn a little bit more, such as I didn't realize she started off in her career in marketing.
Yeah, how about it?
And worked for Dean Foods, and
all kinds of stuff.
Yes, AT&T.
Yes.
So great interview if you want to learn more about our company and our...
Yeah, and I think a great interview if you want to be inspired as a career person to say how do you build a professional career in any industry. So I think it's great.
For attorneys out there that are looking for CLE credit, we're next week on August 13th in Oak Brook. We're offering our next CLE class, and that is life-changing events and title, marriage, divorce, bankruptcy, and homestead. Will be another great presentation. We have close to 50 registrants right now. There's always room for more.
There's always room.
Always room for more, but not only do you get to hear a great CLE presentation, but you also get to hear from the great team at Land Trust of what's happening in the industry and things you need to be aware of. So attorneys out there, register today. We're going to hold an open house tomorrow.
Yes.
I don't know if you do that.
Yeah, I do. It's in Northbrook, right?
So we have multiple closing locations. One of our newest closing locations is in Northbrook, and it's located in the North Shore Barrington Association of Realtors building.
NASBAR.
Correct. So any realtors or attorneys that are looking to get together and network and see the new space, that'll be from 4 to 6 o'clock tomorrow.
Will that be on our social, Land Trust social?
It's on our socials right now.
Who knows when this will air, it may have already happened.
You may have received an email or seen it on socials.
Right.
But yes, no need to RSVP. Come by.
Yeah.
Mix and mingle with the best. Steve
Beautiful.
will be there, and I will be there as well.
Love it.
So that's happening. Those are the things that I wanted to cover right now.
Okay. I have a couple of points.
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. So, Chicagoland Lollapalooza just wrapped up.
Yes.
Matt, have you attended? I've never been to a Lollapalooza, although
man.
I've seen a show there. But
So what I'll say is, in the current form of Lollapalooza, I have not and will not attend.
Okay.
I'm averse to big crowds, long lines, traffic jams, things like that, and that's what Lollapalooza is all about. However, and I'm dating myself, I was in attendance at the very first traveling Lollapalooza.
And where was that?
It was all over the country. The one I saw was just outside of Cleveland, Ohio.
And who was there?
The headliner was Jane's Addiction.
Wow.
9 Inch Nails.
Wow.
Which it was one of their first shows.
Okay.
So that was a big
deal.
thing. Susie and the Banshees.
Oh my gosh.
Living Color.
Living Color.
So it was a lot of fun.
Wow.
Good friend of mine, we had no tickets. We tried to win tickets because it was sold out. We were calling radio stations.
Did you guys go straight from there to Woodstock or no?
We did not. No Woodstock for me. But we wound up going to Lollapalooza, finding tickets, and sitting in the pavilion for the day, and it was very fun.
Okay.
What I see today, which is
mass of
downtown
humanity.
Chicago, no thank you.
Okay.
No
okay.
thank you.
Well, kids are having fun down there, Matt.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Did you have more points?
I do have a couple more.
Okay, please.
But,
I'm ready.
Well, so, hey, right now, the Cubs are 6 games out of the wild card. They took 3 out of 4 from St. Louis.
Yes.
So that was exciting. Could have took 4 out of 4 if they'd have played things right and not thrown the ball around.
So since the trade deadline, the Cubs got rid of a couple players,
Yep.
got a couple players.
Yep.
Pete Crow Armstrong has been this series hitting great, even though they made a very bad defensive
Bellinger's
blunder.
healthy.
So yeah, we'll see what happens.
We'll see.
They're in 5th place in their division.
Okay. And there's only 5 teams, right?
Correct. Now, are you going to talk about our other alleged Major League Baseball
Oh
team?
my gosh! So how many have they lost? 22 straight or 21?
20. I believe it's 20-20
20
right now
games.
as of today.
Yeah, painful.
And it's a shame to see.
Yeah.
It's
even for a Cubs fan, it's hard to watch.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
And it's sad to see.
Yeah.
So
and we hope they pull it up. We might need to call Ozzie back.
I'm sure he'd be. There's nowhere to go but up.
Yeah.
I think you can manage the team, or I can manage the team and do no worse.
Well, and Matt, Dub Bears.
Excited.
Canton. We had the. Is this? Let's hit the close button there, Matt. Just close that low battery. Just hit the close. Yeah. There we go. Okay, Dub Bears. So Bears had a big victory. It took lightning and inclement weather to cancel the game so that we held at 21-17. But we know it's just preseason. But a lot of buzz around the Bears. Caleb Williams and the whole gang. So
it'll be an exciting season.
Yeah.
I think they'll be okay.
Okay,
we'll see.
we'll talk a month from now and see. The preseason will have been over by then, and we will be gearing up for the first NFL game at the next recording.
Yes, and salute to Steve McMichael Devin Hester
and Peppers.
And Peppers.
Yep.
Newest
Sweet Peppers.
Exactly. Newest members of the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
The Bears have the most inductees into
More
the
than
NFL.
Green Bay?
More than anybody,
Okay,
Steve.
more
Than Green Bay. More than anybody.
More than anybody.
So I was always a big fan of both Devin Hester and Steve McMichael.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy, especially for Steve McMichael.
Absolutely.
He's been battling ALS. It's not going to be a happy ending.
No.
And they say he hung on for this day.
Wow.
So this day has come. God bless
God
him.
bless him. Yep. Fantastic. Okay, this is the People Not Titles podcast. Matt, we've been talking for over an hour now.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's a lot of action-packed information. Hope you enjoy it. Signing off, Matt Lombardi and Steve Kaempf.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening to the People Not Titles podcast. We are proudly sponsored by Land Trust Title Services. If you enjoyed the podcast, please hit the like button. Please subscribe. And we'd love it if you'd share our podcast with your friends. Thanks a lot.